Hi, Blaze leaders. I trust that you're all doing well today. Pray that you're having a good week. And I'm excited to again come back to our leadership series that I'm just trying to share with you and trying to give a little bit to you in the form of leadership training. Again, I'm not approaching this as I have already arrived or I'm some great leader. There are probably a lot of you watching this who are better leaders than I am. But my heart is that we will grow together and that we would always continue to learn and to sharpen our skills and add more tools to our belt. Because if we stop learning and we believe that we've arrived at some sort of top of the mountain, then we're really in trouble. So we want to make sure that we always continue to lead and to grow. And so we're going to pick up from where we left off last time. We ended chapter one, remember, of John Maxwell, Developing the Leader Within You. We talked about the various positions or the levels of leadership. Remember, we started with the first level being positional or position, where, for example, we were talking about me. I have come to First Baptist as the youth pastor, and the very first day I was introduced as the youth pastor, all of my authority that I had came from simply my position. I'm the youth pastor. So whether it was some of you or the students or whoever, um, they listened to me and honored my request simply because of that position. That is the lowest form of leadership. You do not want to stay a leader who just has the respect of people simply because of the position that you hold. I mean, you really don't even have their respect. They're simply honoring you because of the position you hold. Again, this would be like you. The only reason that you respect your boss is simply because that person is your boss. You respect the title, you don't respect the person, and so you realize that if you don't treat your boss well, you don't use manners with your boss, or that kind of thing. Well, that person's going to fire you. So it really is just that you're honoring the position and you're not honoring the person. That's the base level. Then we said it moves up to production, and it moves up the line there, and eventually you get to the last level, which is personhood, where you've achieved the highest level of leadership, where you are developing leaders, where people, you don't have to ask people, hey, come on board with me. People are pressing through the crowd. They are pushing to get to you. They want to know what you know. They want to learn the tricks of the trade that you have learned. They want to master this whole idea of leading people the way you have mastered it. If you reach that point, then that is something really phenomenal. You are really a leader that is worthy of other people following. So it's my prayer for myself, and it's my prayer for all of you, that you would be the best leader that you can be in your homes, in your workplace, in the church, in the youth ministry, wherever else that you exert this idea of leading people, that you be the best that you could. So getting into it, part two. Part two today, we're going to cover priorities. Priorities. This one is a difficult one for me. Maybe it's one for you. Um, as a matter of fact, I have this list of to-do things on my desk here. I'm going to show it to you just for a minute, but like there's my to-do list. So I mean, it's kind of backwards, but you'll see I really don't have any like one, two, three, four, five, order of priority. I simply just put bullets. I live in the world of bullets, so I put bullets and I write down something, and so I'm paging through and I'm paging through, and I've got all these things on my to-do list, and the problem is that the last item that I put on my to-do list, it might be number 800, but you know what? It's the most important thing that I'm supposed to do. And so I'm going to bullet, I'm going to write it down, but I'm going to go back to the top of the list and start working there while I'm leaving the most important thing, the priority for the moment, I'm leaving that to be last. So maybe you're like me, you really struggle with priorities, you struggle with how to get things done in a certain amount of time and what things should be done in that time. And by the time it's over, that little window of time you have is over, you have not gotten any of the things that are uh, concerning priorities, how is it that we keep the most important thing the most important thing? How do we keep that right in front of our eyes to focus on, prioritize, manage, to make sure that we are concentrating all of our energy as leaders to the most important things? Because the most important things are the ones that will help us succeed the most. So priorities. All right, so we're going to get into it. And one of the first things that John Maxwell discusses when we talk about priorities is something called the Pareto principle. Now, I'm going to spell it for you. It is Pareto, the Pareto principle. John Maxwell says he learned about the Pareto principle years ago in business, and the Pareto principle is commonly called the 20-80 principle. The 20-80 principle. And so let's kind of go over this 20-80 principle and give you an idea of what he means really, and then we'll break it down a little bit. The basis for the Pareto principle is this: that 20% of your priorities will give you 80% of your production if you spend your time, energy, money, and personnel on the top 20% of your priorities. Listen again. 20% of your priorities will give you 80% of your production if you spend your time, energy, money, and personnel on the 20% of your priorities. So the reality is that we want to take the 20% of our priorities and invest them wisely, smart, the 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 most smart way that we can, and that is going to render us 80% of our production. So, um, whatever the 20% that you're doing right now in terms of priorities, whatever you are investing 20% into those priorities, they're giving you 80% of your results. So, right now, if you are investing 20% of your time into whatever that you feel is the priority, and the 80% that you're getting back result wise you're not happy with, it's because those priorities are not the right priorities. What you are investing your time, your energy, your money, all your resources, your talent, what you're investing into, it's kicking you back. It's paying you back all these dividends. It's producing for you all this stuff. You're not happy with the results simply because your priorities are wrong. For me, I need to make sure that I invest wisely while I'm here in this position. If I'm spending, you know, all of my time, all of the student ministry budget, all of my energy on buying games or on checking out the latest hippest youth conference for us to go to. I'm not hanging out with students. I'm not working on discipleship. I'm not investing in my leaders. I'm not looking for new leaders. Then we're not going to go anywhere. I mean, yeah, we're going to have a good time maybe every other weekend, or we're going to have a good time whenever we go to these awesome things or whatever, but we're not going to grow any roots. There isn't going to be any depth as a group. So I need to make sure that the 20%, those things I'm investing in, what kind of results do I want? So that the results, you almost work from the end forward. You think about the uh, desired end that you want, and then you work back from that in terms of investing. So, examples of the Pareto principle. All right, here we go. This is from page 21 of John Maxwell's book, Developing the Leader Within You. Examples of the Pareto principle. For example, time, 20% of our time produces 80% of the results. Counseling, 20% of the people take up 80% of our time. Products, 20% of the products bring in 80% of the profit. Reading, 20% of the book contains 80% of the content. Job, 20% of our work gives us 80% of our satisfaction. Speech, 20% of the presentation produces 80% of the impact. Donations, 20% of the people will give 80% of the money. We say that a lot in the church. 20% of the giving of the people here, they are really the ones who give all the money. Leadership, 20% of the people will make 80% of the decisions. Picnic, 20% of the people will eat 80% of the food. I'm sure we'll see that coming up here Sunday at our picnic, but don't tell anybody I said that. So every leader needs to understand the Pareto principle in the area of people, oversight, and leadership. For example, 20% of the people in an organization will be responsible for 80% of the company's success. That means that 20% of us who make up Blaze will be responsible for the success or the failure of Blaze. Everything rises and falls on leadership. Ultimately, the buck stops with me and comes back to me. However, I don't represent 20%. I'm not 20% of Blaze. It is a combination of myself and people who I allow to be in the position or either put in the position. So it's very important for me to understand that, and you, wherever you are at in terms of leadership, whether you're thinking about this for your job, the people you're over as a leader, or other areas in the church here, or other avenues of leadership that you have, possibly in your private life, in your life apart from church. So the following strategy will enable a leader to increase the productivity of an organization. One, determine which people are the top 20% producers. Two, spend 80% of your people time with the top 20%. Three, spend 80% of your personal development uh, money or budget or dollars on the top 20%. Four, determine what 20% of the work gives 80% of the return and train somebody else to do 80% less effective work. So this frees up the producer to do what he or she does best. So you determine what 20% of the work is the most important, and that person does that. Then the 80% can be done by somebody else. So, for example, um, any of you in Blaze and the leadership team can do announcements. Any of you can connect with a student. Any of you can write a birthday card. Any of you can text somebody. Any of you can tweet somebody, a student. Any one of you can call a student. One of you can hang out with a student. I know maybe it means more. There's maybe some like oh, it was really awesome, whatever, that Pastor Kevin or whatever hung out with me or so and so. But some of you are going to connect with the students in a way that I don't, and not everybody will be all crazy about hanging out with me. And the reality is that I can't hang out one on one with girls. I mean, it's just it's not going to work. And so the reality is that I cannot spend all of my time hanging out with students. And I'm not saying that I am, and I'm not. But I'm using this illustration to drive this point home. The top 20% most important is, in terms of the ministry, is the direction of the ministry, the teaching of the ministry, the substance of the ministry, discipleship. Hanging out is so crucial. It's so important. Relationships are crucial. They're important. Students will make a decision whether or not to come based on relationships. However, what's going to drive us ahead is that we know where we're going, the students jump on board with that, parents jump on board with that, and that we are actually producing disciples. If we're not producing disciples, then all we're doing is glorified babysitting. I don't care what it looks like. I don't care how awesome the worship is. I don't care if you get 200 students to come out to every event. If there's no discipleship, if students are not learning how to love and worship Jesus greater, if they're not ditching their cigarettes, if they're not tossing the bottle, if they're not being more respectful to their parents, if they're not changing their lifestyle, if transformation is not taking place, you and I are wasting our time. So the 20%, the top 20%, the direction, the discipleship, that is going to be handled by me. That's something that God has called me to do. That is my purpose. The 80% can be done by a lot of people. All right. That does not mean the 80% is any less important. It's very important, but it is not the top 20%. All right. So you designate the top 20% to be done by somebody, only they can do it. Boom. 80%, everybody else. All right. Or other people. Okay. So you in your organization, whatever you're leading, top 20% of the work, what is that? Who's the only person who can do that? Then the other 80% can be done by a variety of other people. All right, for example, Pastor Clint, right? He preaches. He 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 handles the top 20% of the church. preaching and developing leaders. That is a job that God has called him alone to do. He's not doing the worship. He's not doing the greeting. He's not collecting the offering. He's not cleaning the church. He's not doing that. Because that's the other 80% that does not necessarily drive the church as much as the other 20 and can be done by somebody else. All right? Other people who are good in that ministry, experts in those areas. But if we did not have a worship leader, if we did not have a men's ministry leader, if we didn't have those people, other people would rise up to do those things, possibly not as good. But it's the idea that 80% is being done by somebody else. Then last, ask the top 20% to do on-the-job training for the next 20%. So the worst thing I could do is come, do my job, act like I'm the only one that can ever do my job, and never teach anybody else some of the things that I'm doing. First thing I because if he's sick, he's not there, his family gets called to the ministry, they move somewhere else, who knows what will happen. If he leaves, then we're scrambling to figure out how to run it. If he's absent, he's sick, he's late, we're scrambling to figure out how to run it. So the worst thing that can happen is that people hold hostage their gifts. Sometimes people will hold hostage their gifts and talents simply to make sure that they're needed. Like, well, if I train somebody else, I'm not going to be needed as much. I mean, that's a selfish way to see it. I mean, the reality is it's not about us. It's about the ministry, Blaze, being as successful as possible and reaching as many students as possible. And we are not going to reach a lot of students if we are not teaching each other habits that are successful. I mean, if it's just us and it never goes beyond us, we're not going to reach that many people. If it's just me and never goes beyond me, we're in trouble. All right. I mean, the reality is that this thing needs to grow bigger than all of us. So that's what we do. All right. Remember, this is crucial. We teach what we know. We reproduce what we are. You teach what you know, but you produce who you are. Who you are is what you produce. Like begets like. So the question is, are we identifying these people in Blaze? So let me kind of summarize it and personalize it for us. All right, personalize it for us in Blaze. Let's talk about students, because what will drive our ministry ahead is that students' lives are being transformed and students are becoming disciples and then producing disciples. So we have to determine who the top 20 uh, percent producers are in Blaze. These would be, the top 20% students who are the producers, who are the movers, who are the shakers, who are the influencers at Blaze, who are the ones where if they stand up and say something, everybody listens. They stand up and say, whoa, everybody freezes. They walk into the room, everybody knows. Who are those top 20% in Blaze? And maybe we have to ask the question amongst us as a leadership team. Who are the top 20% leaders for us? And the reality is that we probably need more, um, more adult leaders to work with. But among us now, who are the top 20? Needs to be considered. Then we need to make sure that we're spending 80% of our time with those people. This one's crucial. All right. Spend 80% of our people time with those. So we need to determine, all right, let's focus in on the students for the rest of this example. We need to be spending 80% of our time with that top 20%. So whoever we determine those are, we can have a conversation about who those people may be. Spending 80% of our time with those people, developing them. And some people will say, well, that's bad because you're playing favorites. Well, you're forgetting about everybody else. Remember what we said about Jesus. Jesus had his 12, he had his 3, then he had his 1, John the Beloved. All right, so we're simply trying to model something that Jesus did. I don't think that's a bad habit. So we need to consider, in this Pareto principle, who's our 20%, and we need to spend 80% of our time with those people, developing them, and having them in turn around and produce other leaders. So if we invest in the top 20%, the the top 20 who are the most productive, if we invest in them as leaders, then I guarantee you we're going to see the benefits of the Pareto principle coming our way. I guarantee you. It's not how hard you work, it's how smart you work. Timeless truth. So true. So as we're wrapping up this Pareto principle section, tell you a story. A man was told that if he worked the very hardest he could, he would become rich. The hardest work he knew was digging holes. So he set about, uh, you know, getting his shovel and digging these great holes in his backyard. He didn't get rich. He only got a backache. He worked hard, but he worked without any priorities. We need to make sure we have priorities. Next, as we're moving on, organize or agonize. The ability to juggle 3 or 4 high priority projects successfully is a must for every leader. A life in which anything goes will ultimately be a life in which nothing goes. You have to organize or agonize. So prioritize assignments. So for example, the following 4 ways on how to organize. All right, and listen to these. These are uh, really going to help you out in all aspects of your life in terms of prioritizing. Most important, one, high importance, high urgency. So look at things when we're talking about prioritizing, organize or agonize. The very first thing are things that are high importance, high urgency. Tackle these projects first. Number two, high importance, low urgency. Set deadlines for completion and get these projects worked into your daily routine. Number three, low importance but high urgency. Find quick ways to get this done without too much personal involvement. If possible, delegate it to somebody else who can do it. All right, your can do person. Fourthly, low importance, low urgency. This is busy or repetitious work, all right, such as paper filing or rearranging a bookshelf or cleaning. I mean, stack it up and do it in a half an hour segments every week. Get somebody else to do it, or don't do it at all. Before putting off until tomorrow is something you can do today. Study it clearly. Maybe you can postpone it indefinitely. This is just mundane stuff that, as a leader, you should not be doing. You should spend the least amount of time humanly possible doing it. So again, we'll do top 4: high importance, high urgency; high importance, low urgency; low importance, high urgency; and low importance, low urgency. All right, so that's how you organize or agonize. Next, choose or lose. Choose or lose. All right, every person is either a initiator or a reactor when it comes to planning. Um, and an example is our calendar. The question is not will my calendar be full, but who fills my calendar? Who fills my calendar? If we are leaders of others, the question is not will I see people, but the question is who will I see? My observation is that leaders tend to initiate and those who are not leaders tend to react. Um, Note the difference. Leaders, they initiate, they lead, they pick up the phone and make contact, they spend time planning, they anticipate problems, they invest time with people, and they fill the calendar by priorities. Those who are not leaders, they react, they listen, they wait for the phone to ring, they spend time living day to day, they react to problems, they spend time with people, but they fill the calendar by requests. All right, so leaders, man, they're proactive, they initiate. Those who are not leaders, they don't. They simply wait for life to happen. You have to evaluate or you'll reach a stalemate. All right, it's so important. You have to evaluate or you'll reach a stalemate. So the following questions will assist your prioritization process. All right, first, what is required of me? What is required of me? So ask yourself the question, what is required of you? Take a minute and list what is required of you in your job by priority if possible. So what he does is gives 4 lines here. So whether you're talking about your job or you know what, maybe now is a great time to talk about Blaze. What is required of you? Do you even know? If you don't know, that's my failure as a leader. What do you think is required of you? What is required of you in your job, in your ministry? Number two, what gives me the greatest return? The effort expended should approximate the results expected. A question I must continue to ask myself, John Maxwell says, is am I doing what I do best and receiving a good return for the organization? In Blaze, are you doing what is going to give the best return? Are you doing what gives you the greatest return? In your job, are you doing what gives you the greatest return? So it says, take a minute and list what gives you the greatest return on your job. So what gives you the greatest return? Lastly, what is most rewarding? Life is too short not to be fun. Our best work takes place when we enjoy it. So take a minute, write down what is most satisfying in your job. What's most satisfying when you come to Blaze? What's most satisfying when you go to work? When you go to other areas of your life where you exert leadership? Success in your work will be greatly increased if the three R's are all the same: the requirements, the return, and the reward. If the requirements of my job are the same as my strengths that give me the highest return, and doing those things bring me great pleasure, then I will be successful if I act on my priorities. So I want you to think about requirements, I want you to think about return, I want you to think about reward. Okay, as we come to a close here, there's just a couple other segments here real quick we're going to go through, and then we'll be done. All right, priority principles. To help you as you think about priority principles. Priorities never stay put. All right, to keep priorities in place, do the following. Evaluate every month. Review the three R's we just talked about: requirements, return, reward. Then eliminate. Ask yourself, what am I doing that can be done by someone else? Eliminate. Then three, estimate. What are the top projects you are doing this month, and how long will they take? All right, so if you evaluate, you eliminate, and you estimate, you will be more successful at keeping priorities and keeping the real priorities at the top of your list. You cannot overestimate the unimportance of practically everything. All right, he says he loves this principle, and he says it's a little exaggerated but needs to be said. You cannot overestimate the unimportance of practically everything. Dr. Anthony Campolo tells about a sociological study in which 60 people over the age of 95 were asked one question. All right, 60 people over the age of 95 were asked one question. If you could live your life over again, what would you do differently? If you could live your life over again, what would you do differently? It was an open-ended question, and the multiplicity of answers constantly reemerged and dominated the results of the study. These were the three answers. If I had to do it over again, I would reflect more. If I had to do it over again, I would risk more. If I had to do it over again, I would do more things that would live on after I'm dead. 60 people over the age of 95, they all said this. If I had to do life over again, I'd reflect more. If I had to do life over again, I would risk more. If I had to do life over again, I would do things that would live on after I'm dead. The program of planned neglect, I believe, John Maxwell says, accounts for my success. Make sure that you do things, right, that are helping you to hit these items. Reflecting more, risking more, and building things, pouring into things, spending your time on things that will live past you, live on when you're dead. Those of you who have kids, it's a prime example. Investing in your kids. The good is the enemy of the best. There was a book that came out that was entitled "Good is the Enemy of Great." This came out before that book, so John Maxwell says the good is the enemy of best. Most people can prioritize when faced with a right or wrong issue. The challenge arises: what do we do when we're faced with two good choices? Now what should we do? So how to break the tie between two good options? Number one, ask your overseer or coworkers their preference. 2, can one of the options be handled by someone else? If so, pass it on and work on the one that only you can do. 3, which option would be more of a benefit to the customer? Which option would bring more benefit to the company? Too many times We are like the merchant who is so intent on trying to keep the store clean that he would never unlock the front door. The real reason for running the store is to have customers come in, not clean it up. And lastly, 4, make your decision based on the purpose of the organization. So if you've got two things, man, they are both equally great. You got to decide on one. Talk about which one's going to be more productive for the organization. All right, and remember, look, you can't have it all. All right, you can't have it all. Many years ago, John Maxwell read this poem by William H. Henson. He who seeks one thing, and but one, may hope to achieve it before life is done. But he who seeks all things wherever he goes must reap around him in whatever he sows, a harvest of barren regret. Remember, you can't have it all. Make sure that you focus on one thing. You can't have it all. Like many people, um, Joel Porter had a hard time eliminating things in his life. 95% of achieving everything is knowing what you want. This guy, Joel Porter, that John Maxwell quotes in his book, he will attest to the fact that 95% of achieving anything is knowing what you want. You can't have it all. Learn to focus down. Too many priorities paralyze us. Every one of us has looked at our desks filled with memos and papers, heard the phone ring, watched the door open, all at the same time. And you just remember this frozen feeling that comes over you, that came over you. How can you possibly do it all at once? You can't. This is like the juggler who simply keeps on adding one more thing, juggling, and pretty soon he's not dropping one thing, he drops everything. Or have you seen the plate spinning illustration where the guy starts to, spin a plate and he's got like 20, 20 plates or whatever, and he's spinning them, and by the time he gets back to by the time he spins the last plate, runs back to the first one, it falls down, and then they all fall. So the reality is that too many priorities will paralyze us. If you're overloaded with work, list the priorities on a separate sheet of paper and make sure that you prioritize those, all right, for yourself. Sit down, take a breath, prioritize, all right? There are probably some things that you are doing that you don't necessarily need to be doing. Remember, the time deadlines and emergencies will force us to prioritize. We find this in Parkinson's law. If you have only one letter to write, it will take all day to do it. If you have 20 letters to write, you'll get them done in one day. So what is the most efficient time in our work? Well, John Maxwell says it's the week before vacation. Why can't we always run our lives the way we do the week before we leave the office? Making decisions, cleaning off the desk, returning calls. Under the normal conditions, we would be inefficient. And so what he says is that we need to understand that too often we learn too late what is really important. So we need to understand that this is like the team, the basketball team or the football team or whatever team that plays the last minute of the game, the last inning of the game, the last 4 downs of the game. They play with everything. They play how they should have been playing the whole time. But they had a not really a deadline as much as the reality is that they had to make the touchdown. They had to score the run, or else they lose. So the pressure of the moment squeezed the best out of them. But for if they're not under pressure, then they're just playing. I don't know, half-heartedly. They're just kind of getting by. We don't want to learn what is so important um, too late in the game. Too often we learn too late what's really important. We don't want to do that. We can learn. We can learn that right now. We can grow right now. We don't have to learn it too late in the game. We don't have to be like the team that they got stopped on the 1 yard line. They were giving it all they had for those 4 downs, but how they played those 4 downs is how they should have played the whole game. You in your personal life, you as a leader in your home, you as a leader in your job, you as a leader here in Blaze, and me as a leader. Are we giving everything we have every moment of the game? Or do we step it up to this level that we could really and should really be at all the time? Do we step it up only when the pressure is on? Every single moment makes a difference. And maybe as we come to a close here, maybe that is a mind change and a heart change that we need to experience, each and every one of us, seeing every moment as a difference making moment. Not, some days you go into your office, some days you may come to church and you say there's nothing particularly special about this day. And that, my friends, is simply a lie from the enemy. Every single moment is an opportunity to make a difference. Someone's life at your job, time spent with your kids, time with your spouse, time here at church and Blaze with the students. Every single moment is a difference making opportunity. So, my prayer for you is that you would tackle this whole idea of priorities, that you would take time to sit down, evaluate, that you would go through the 3 R's, remember what they are, and that you would work through your priorities and you would become somebody who learns how to organize and not agonize. That you would learn how to prioritize those things in your life, and that in the end, after doing all of that, you would see that you are being more fulfilled, there's more reward coming out, and that you are crossing those things off your list from most important to least important, and doing it in a way that brings you life. So thanks so much for watching or listening, and we will pick up next week, maybe a little longer, part number 3, which is the most important ingredient of leadership: integrity. Integrity. Thanks so much, guys. Love you, appreciate you. We'll see you next time.